Robert, the first thing you and I have in common is, I suppose, Wakefield, really, because I think after you'd, as a youngster, moved from York, you lived much of your youth in Wakefield and went to Queen Elizabeth Grammar School there. Is that right?
I did indeed, yes. So that's a very good connection between you and I.
Yeah, having been the bishop there for 11 years. So when did you leave Wakefield then, Robert?
I left Wakefield after I'd been done my degree and started working in the business.
Yeah.
Ultimately travelled around the world, coming back to Yorkshire about 15 years ago.
Yes, I can see that you've not exactly been static. Tell me a little bit, though. You started off, I think you said, in advertising. Is that right?
Yes, I think I have to admit I'm a failed ad man. That was my dream to begin with, and somehow I got diverted into printing.
And quite fascinating, an ad man with a sign making company. Is that right?
Yes, they were one of my clients, and I happened to find them at a time of development when I was given an opportunity to carry the bags for the managing director who had just been promoted. And that was my entree into the world of communication and printing.
And what sort of signs did you make then?
We did everything you could imagine, from high street banks, building societies, petrol companies, and it was an exciting time. We took the business from about 12th in the UK to the most preeminent in Europe, and ultimately we were doing signs for Ford in every country apart from America.
Sounds really fascinating. It's the sort of area that you take for granted. You see signs up everywhere, and you then don't think, well, who made these, who designed them, and so on. And it was through that, really, you got into printing. Is that right?
Well, yes, I was a young 27-year-old with big ideas of strategic planning and decided we could diversify into point of sale. We bought a little screen printing company, and it was a failure.
And then I gather your boss said, go and run a factory.
Well, no, I said, can I do another strategic plan? And he said, well, in very right language, he said, no, you've done one. On Monday morning, you can be the new managing director, so do something with it, shut it down and make it work.
So he'd have been good on The Apprentice, would he? Sounds like he was a rather tough guy.
It was exactly that sort of chap, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And was it after that you went to go and do your MBA in Bradford then, or?
Yes, I'd always wanted to do business studies, and that was the way to polish it off. And I found that I really enjoyed the world of being involved with the business school. So I took a slight diversion and finished up as the business development director of the business school.
Right, and how long were you at Bradford University for then?
10 years altogether, yeah.
Right, yeah. And in that time, so the job you ended up doing there, what did that involve really?
Well, we were very big at the time. We had a big reputation for working on corporate programs. So we were running things like the MBA program for the BBC, and we pioneered MBAs for single companies. What we hadn't done was to look at what we could do internationally. And I found a way to franchise the MBA. So one of my claims to fame is that I am the man who opened the Bradford MBA in Tel Aviv. And then just to put the polish on it, I went to Dubai and did the same thing again with Emirates Airlines. It was a great time.
I was amazed by that. Yeah, really quite exciting things we've been doing. But also back in this country, you've been a bit mixed up with one or two other companies I've come across. The Barnsley Chronicle.
Oh, yes.
What did you do there?
I ran the contract print side of it, printing newspapers. And so I've run printing companies of most shape or size, starting, as you say, with screen print, but then into fine art for libraries and art museums, and then ultimately with the press. And I can tell you, there's nothing beats taking a copy of the Barnsley Chronicle off the running board at 4 o'clock in the morning. That's the most satisfying experience in print that it can possibly be.
And tell me, is that the same company as run Pen and Sword book publications?
It is. It's Sir Nicholas Hewitt and the family.
Yeah. And I think he's a stationer, but we'll come on to stationers in a minute. And how about, you also had an encounter with a man who ran Waddington's Games, Monopoly.
Yes, yes, I did. Yes, when I've worked with the BPF for many years in different guises. But going back 12 years or so ago, there was an opportunity to develop supporting the industry and around some work that Michael Porter had been doing. And I had the chance to set up an initiative, and I thought it would be a good idea if we had a figurehead. And I approached Victor Watson, who was the chairman of Waddington's, very famous grandee in the industry, who'd beaten off Robert Maxwell's 2 aggressive bids. And I said to Victor, we can do something good for the printing industry here, but I need a figurehead. Would you think about being the president? And he said, Robert, I would need to think about that. The answer is yes. And so,
and was that was Print Yorkshire, was it?
That was Print Yorkshire, yeah. And so I really, one of those moments in one's life to be able to work with Victor, who was such an inspiration and figurehead in the industry, and he helped me enormously to get that initiative started.
Can you say a bit about Print Yorkshire and what that did, really?
Yes, I mean, anybody who's familiar with the aims and objectives of stationers in content communication, promoting the industry, encouraging young people, establishing best practice. And it was a local initiative that was funded through Yorkshire Forward. The
regional development, yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the man who ran that, but he used to come out, he lived in Wakefield too. Anyway, we'll move on. Your first links with stationers were rather exciting and exotic, I gather. Is that right?
Well, it could have been the end of the beginning, actually. I'd just been driving from Peking to Paris.
I gather have you got 1 or 2 clips you could show us about this great trip?
Well, yes, I could. Yes, let's have a look.
Yes. There's the Beetle that you went in.
Yeah. That's
where's that?
And that was the route that we took. So it was 10,000 miles, and it took 5 weeks. And that's
including
I finished up at Stationers Hall, speaking at the annual dinner of the printing charity, where we've been collecting funds on the way in that rally.
So who was your co-driver?
That was an American guy who owned the car. And he and I had reached an agreement over the telephone and the internet. We hadn't met before, so it was a challenge in many ways.
Well, I gather you went through the Gobi Desert.
We did. That was. Yeah, I'd read a book when I was at school at Quakes, The Mad Motorist, who did this trek in 1907, and I was fascinated by it. And the highlight for me was driving across the Gobi Desert in the footsteps of Count Borghese, with no roads, following the telegraph poles, and just blasting across the open desert. It was fantastic.
And so that amazing expedition ending here at Stationers Hall, was that the beginning of your links with stationers?
Yes, it was. Yes, yes.
Can you say a bit more how that went on then?
Well, we subsequently, with Victor's encouragement, we had a dinner in York, and Richard Brewster, who was master at the time, came along and spoke, and we had a chat, and I think that sowed the seed. And a couple of years later, I thought, time to do something about it. That's how it all started.
And did you take over from Tom Pinder?
Tom was instrumental in creating the idea of having a Northern Stationers group.
Yeah.
They fallow for quite some time, but 3 or 4 years ago, a group of us decided that we would reinitiate that, and it's become very, very successful. We've organised a number of trips to the Hockney exhibition, to the Hepworth Gallery, but importantly, these are not just for Northern Stationers. This is something that Northern Stationers can contribute, but we've had half the people coming have travelled from London. So to me, it's just extending the reach of the company nationally, but not intentionally restricted. It's an open invitation to the whole of the company.
I think that's a wonderful initiative, because when I was in Wakefield, for the 11 years I was there, quite often we might say, why don't we have the next meeting of this group in York, or even Birmingham sometimes?
Yeah.
And the response normally was, it's a very long way for us to come from London. So that, we then reminded them that it was quite a long way for us to go from Wakefield. So yes, if we can get people up from London into the north of England to these things, it's a good thing.
Well, I try to reassure them that the motorway is quite good, and there's only a small cobbled section in Sheffield. Once you get through that, it's okay.
And since you've been a stationer, can you tell us one or two of the things then that you've organised in the north?
Well, as I say, we went to the Hockney exhibition and Saltaire.
Yeah.
We took a trip to the Minster Library.
Yeah.
Another highlight was being able to watch the clerk reading a copy of the Wicked Bible, one of the very few remaining.
And I remember, I couldn't come, I know, because I think I was out of the country or something, but I remember you had a very good trip to the Hepworth Gallery.
We did, and that's a fantastic initiative that's really leading the regeneration of a whole area in Wakefield. And I think you've had an involvement with that particular gallery.
Yeah, I'm still called a trustee emeritus. It's the best sort of trustee you can ever be, because you don't have to do anything apart from go to nice gatherings like yours.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So you said at one point, you know, one of the great things about what's been going on, particularly in the north, is content with communication, picking up the station as sort of motto almost. Do you want to give an example of that, perhaps?
Not sure what do you have in mind?
I don't know, but I mean, I suppose it's the sort of work you've done yourself, but also the way that you've introduced other people to galleries, to art in the north, and we hope soon to Newcastle.
Yes.
We might actually, let's move on to Newcastle, because another initiative you've taken is that, and we're hoping very much on the 25th of September, right at the end of September, to take a small group of people around the cathedral, which is in the midst, in the throes, one would say, of a huge restoration and conservation scheme. And we're going to have the privilege of walking through it mid-progress. And then I think you're hoping that we might go on from there.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect example of how the company, how Status Company enables things to happen. Because from a little germ of an idea, which was to take a group to Newcastle, because one of our members said, oh, you think you've been north when you get as far as York, but there's the rest of the world, so we should do something beyond that. And he's in Newcastle, and we looked at what we should have a look at and found that you are something of an authority on cathedrals. And so we have an immediate connection and opportunity to develop the idea. The next thing we find out is that Trinity House is a wonderful museum to naval matters. It has a master, it has a history which parallels the Stationers' Company, and they're very excited about us going there. And given the success that we've had in going to art galleries, we thought, well, the Baltic is just on the other side of the Tyne, within walking distance, so we'll give visitors an opportunity to choose. We'll all start at the cathedral, we'll have lunch at Trinity House, and then either with their museum or to go to the Baltic. So we've a lovely little itinerary there.
That's great, and I think it's a wonderful initiative, and I hope we can just put a little, we can finish up by thanking you so much for all you've done to invigorate the Northern Stationers as a group, but also as a little advert, 25th of September, if you've not already booked in, we'd love to see you there. Thank you so much, Robert. Very good to talk.
Very enjoyable. Thank you. Thank you, Master.